Welcome into another edition of the Going Deep podcast. I'm your host today, Kevin Massare, here as always with Mike Bundt for this Schedule Friday. Mike, we're here for a Schedule Friday to go through our favorite games. The Primetime Bills are back again. They're back in action. Everybody's excited. Everybody's gearing up, talking about their favorite games. We're going to do the same, so we're going to bring you some of that. Maybe some at the end, maybe some nuggets and stuff we took away from McDermott's press conference today, as well as some things to start organized team activities here today with the rookie camp happening with some UDFA talk that we got into last week. But more importantly, Mike, how are you doing today? And are you excited for this schedule?
I'm doing great today. I got out golfing for the first time in 2 years this morning. So You can see my face. It's a little bit red from the near 90-degree heat here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, on a trip with my wife right now. But yeah, doing great. Last night was a lot of fun with schedule release night. And now we get to talk about all these fun matchups that await the Bills in 2022.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun ones, and there's a lot to talk about, and definitely, glad that we could go exactly about 24 hours after the release. Much speculation was made. I was glad to be able to gather like 6 games. I think I tweeted earlier in the day that all turned out to be right. So that's always just like a little fun activity. Yes, you could always wait till 8, but it's a fun activity because, you kind of piece it all together and you kind of, mix and match and think about which games you're going to. So, shout out to those who were able to give us some tips and help us out to put some of that 6 games that we got together. So appreciate everyone tuning in, following in on that. So it was pretty fun to do. That happened to be all road games, mostly that were leaked early on in the day. It came to fruition that the Bills were going to get that opening day game, and I wanted to start there. It's obviously the first game, but more importantly, it's the first game of the NFL season, and it's probably the biggest matchup I've already heard about. Not in Buffalo, I'm talking about just in general. They're talking about Von Miller's return to LA, even though he was only there, half the season. What's funny about that is like his real returns to Denver. But I guess because they did win the Super Bowl and he was there half a season, that is an interesting-ish storyline. But more interesting are the two teams, the best team in the NFC, they're reigning champions, against the perceived best team in the AFC. So that is a very interesting battle that the NFL was able to put together in that schedule docket, Mike. So I want to start there. What are your feelings real early on about that battle with, potentially a Super Bowl type of atmosphere?
I love it. It should have been the Super Bowl last year. Unfortunately, 13 seconds. But I really believe that the Bills would have won the Super Bowl last year if they would have made it past Kansas City. And now we have a matchup right off the gate to see really how the Bills match up against the defending Super Bowl champs. Vegas has the Bills as the preseason favorites to win it all, going up against the defending champs. We'll have a really good idea after just 1 week of the season if the Bills are among that elite class in the NFL. We all believe they are. The last couple of seasons, they've shown that they are. But every year is a new year, and you got to prove it on the field. And I'm just glad that we're having it on Thursday night. Bills Mafia in the spotlight. The Bills getting a Thursday night opener after a lot of rumors all off season. Last year, there was some hype that the Bills could take on Tampa. Didn't end up taking place. Dallas instead. This year, I believe a lot of fans are excited about this possibility. And it seemed that after the Bills had announced the Tennessee Titans as the Monday night game, a lot of people dropped the idea when the Bills text came in saying that they'll announce the home opener Thursday at 6:00. But as we know now, a little bit of a deke out move. And now we get this highly anticipated game to kick off the season.
What's tough for me, Mike, with this highly anticipated game was it was the one game I didn't want. I'm primetime Kevin. I enjoy primetime games. I am not like 1 p.m. guy. That is not me. I don't like that. I think that's stupid. Like, I think the team's earned the right to play in front of national fans. You got to deal with it. That's my opinion on the national scale. I love primetime games. How about this? Something that I don't, maybe he's talked about, but I don't hear talked about enough is like, I love watching the other slate and seeing what happens in fantasy or seeing what happens across the league and thinking and talking about that, and then watching my team play. There's something for that I really enjoy, or conversely, playing first and then being able to enjoy the gamut of games that are happening there. So like, I'm not the 1 p.m. guy. I miss too much action at 1 p.m. generally that means you're playing a bad team. Like there's just not enough there to attract me to like the bad Bills teams at 1 p.m. Of the past. So that's not. I'm definitely primetime Kevin. But let me explain. The reason I don't like the Thursday kickoff game, Mike, and this is a challenging one. My child's due 2 days prior, so we were in good shape for the game. Had it been a Sunday game, anytime Sunday. But the kickoff game like literally cramps me up into the hospital region area. So I had some bittersweet feelings of having that one because most likely I'm going to have to watch it from a little hospital TV. And, it's an interesting way to kick off my season, but blessed to be able to do it that way. So that's like my little selfish, like I want all the primetime games, but just literally not that one. And I got it. Like literally not that one. So,
well, you could look at it like this: when you have your child, you can, if the Bills lose, your child will brighten your day up, and you won't be as depressed about the Bills' loss. And if the Bills win, it'll just be a double down on the high that you'll be feeling. So
that's right.
Just look at it like that. A little depressing to watch from a hospital or wherever you'll end up being for that game, but hey, it'll work out either way.
Yeah, so she's due literally. So our scheduled delivery should be like literally a day or two prior. So we'll see how that all turns out. But we were like thinking, like laughingly, like, could we push it up a couple days so that like literally when we get home, the first thing we're greeted with our baby girl is to watch the Bills with her. So I don't know. That had some sentimental value there to be able to make that.
Believe me, I understand. If I was in your situation, I'd be feeling the same way. For the rest of us that aren't in that situation, it's an exciting thing to have a Thursday night game.
We'll be in a unique club of probably 7 parents in Western New York, maybe more. I don't know, 7 to 15 parents in Western New York. That's going to fit in that time frame to get that going. So it'll be cool. Like honestly, like seriously, it's at the end of the day, like I'll watch it on any little TV. Whatever I have to do to enjoy that as well. So it's kind of crazy timing for me. So 2 things at once, to joyous moments. Obviously the most joyous moment is having, a baby, but then, being able to have kickoff NFL, shortly after is quite a September for me. So Mike, what does do though, the positives of that gives me 11 days off with the baby before the Monday nighter against Tennessee. So that's got some good feels. We should be at least trying to
sleep. The LA trip out of the way right away. I mean, if you're going to take on a West Coast team, why not take on the Rams week 1, Thursday night, have 11 days to come back home, acclimate, get yourself back to normal rhythm, routine, and then take on Tennessee in your home opener on Monday Night Football. I think this is the best time to play a team like the Rams. They're going to be pumped. Obviously, they're going to be thinking about the Super Bowl, the ring ceremony, and maybe the Bills can get at them early. You look at it from just a matchup point of view, 2 very good teams, great quarterback matchup, Matt Stafford, Josh Allen, some of the best wide receivers in the game with Cooper Kupp and then Stephon Diggs. The Rams they're a special team. They're not a flashy team in my opinion, but they're a special team. Obviously, Aaron Donald on the defensive side of the ball. You're going to have Von Miller with the Bills. There's a ton of storylines for this. You don't typically get that with an AFC NFC matchup early in the season, but this is as good as it gets in that regard. And the one thing that's going to be weird for me this year is you're talking about 3 Thursday games. Obviously, Thursday night opener. You got a Thursday night against New England, a Thursday for Thanksgiving at Detroit.
Back-to-back.
All 3 of them are on the road as well, which is a little odd. But when it comes prime time versus 1 o'clock on Sunday, I get why a lot of Bills fans like the 1 o'clock on Sunday. It's all about routine. It's an early game. You can enjoy the contest, then watch the rest of the game at 4 o'clock, then Sunday Night Football, not really worry about other things going on. I'm more of, you're given a schedule, you got to play the schedule. I don't care if they play Monday night. I don't care if it's Sunday night, Sunday at 1, Sunday at 4, Saturday at 1, Thursday night. They play when they play. I'm going to make my schedule work to make it flexible enough to where I can catch every game. I understand some people don't have that ability to do so. So the Sunday at 1 is a lot of what people plan and is the most convenient time. But this is one of the perks of being one of the top teams in the NFL. You're going to play these crazy random times, and Bills Mafia better get used to it, because as long as Josh Allen is the quarterback of this team, I don't see this changing for the next 10 years. So it's going to be something where one generation of fans for 17 years grew up on 1 o'clock on Sunday, and there's going to be a whole new generation of fans that's going to grow up expecting them to play on Monday night, Thursday night, Sunday night, 4:25 on Sunday, and etc. So
it's just the benefits of being good in any organization. Like, look at, we covered UB for a while, and there were some kids in college that didn't know UB to be bad. Like, so it's kind of like that whole philosophy of like, you only know what you know. And like in this purposes, like I'm looking at this from a side that is, I like the environment. I think that the team deserves it. I think the fans deserve it. I know we're all creatures of habit, and like the 1 p.m. is kind of cool in terms of like, that's like nostalgic, but like a lot of nostalgically bad 9-6 football games. Like that's kind of what's nostalgic to me, and $20 Bills tickets. Like that's, yes, that has its place. The routine's nice, but the routine for the Bills isn't 1 o'clock on Sunday anymore. That's not their routine. Look at what the Cowboys deal with, good or bad, really. Like, I mean, even the Patriots to an extent, like good or bad, they deal with primetime games. Like that's the routine. And we're just not used to it because we went like 10 years without one or whatever, like borderline beside Thursdays, borderline without one. So the routine now is you're routinely good. Therefore, your routine is a non-routine. So I think that's where some teams like the Cowboys, it doesn't really phase them. They're either good or they're bad. And like, they didn't get caught off guard. So that's kind of where I think the Bills are headed, and they're kind of getting used to that. And yeah, like Jason brings up a good point. Like Sundays mean you're routinely bad. And that's kind of like what I say is that they're really bad. But what's really cool is that they want the world to see the Bills, not just the United States, not just Western New York, not just pockets. They want literally the entire world, including like streaming on one of the games is streamed on like Prime Video, right?
I think Thursday night at New England. Yeah.
I mean,
the week after Thanksgiving.
I've got to experience that a little bit this year with my team in baseball. The Yankees are streaming on Prime, I think literally tonight. And like, it's better than I thought it was going to be in terms of that. Like, it's not that delayed for like a lot of streaming services are so delayed. Like you can't even look at your app on your phone or Twitter because it's so delayed. And like, you don't like, you're going to see it on your screen before you see it in the stream that you're watching. And Prime's done a good job of keeping that delay to a minimal.
It's a new world we live in, Kev. Even Spectrum, if you're a Spectrum customer and you want to get their services, a lot of times they're going to give you the Spectrum app as long as you have internet with them. They're not going to download and get you cable anymore for a lot of customers. So streaming is the way of the future. I understand a lot of people that don't have streaming services are frustrated with it. We heard a lot of that with ESPN Plus, with Sabres fans earlier in the season, but it's the way of the future. We have dealt with it more because we are big basketball guys as well. And we use ESPN Plus to watch and cover some of the teams we've seen in the past. But it's one of those things where it's the way things are trending, and you got to get on board with it. They're even going to have an exclusive game on ESPN Plus at some point this season. So it's just the way it's going to be going forward. And it is. That's really all you can say. It is what it is.
Yeah, and to me, it's interesting because I think it brings in a whole new audience. And I guess I take advantage of that. I'm a Prime user, so like I'm used to the streaming atmosphere and having like watching shows, and like it's not really that big of a deal. The only thing I've ever had a problem with is not wanting to, if I'm on my fantasy app or I'm on Twitter live tweeting or I'm doing different things, I don't want to be 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds behind. Like I know it's not a big deal, but to me, like Mike, to me, to know that the play happened a minute ago, like just irks
That's
me.
tough. You're going to have to stay off.
It grinds me.
People are going to have. Well, the thing is, everybody else is going to be watching it on Prime as well.
Right. So it's not like some are streaming, some aren't.
Yeah. That's more of an issue. Yeah, when you have certain people streaming, certain people not. Because when I watch Bills games on my television, because it's a Spectrum app, I'm routinely a minute behind. But if everybody is going to be a minute behind the live action, you're not going to be getting tweets from the stadium and big numbers that are going to be spoiling things for people watching on the app.
Yeah, good.
You go.
I wanted to just bring up that good point here. Like local games. That's a good point. Like I do believe they have local rights somewhere with ABC or Just like so there was that weird rule that if you're in market, so you like obviously you'd have to be in Buffalo, Rochester, whatever, however Erie, however it extends, you'd have to be in market. But I believe it is advertised or
what's going to be
televised.
interesting though is week 2, the Monday night game against Tennessee, because you have Philadelphia hosting Minnesota later at 8:30 on ABC. Typically, Channel 7 in Buffalo would be the ABC affiliate that would show the Bills game if it was on ESPN. Are they going to be airing the Bills game throughout, or are they going to show the Philadelphia game at any point?
Yeah, they were going to have the Bills game in this case.
That's what
I believe.
What I would imagine.
Yeah, of course. And locally though, like we're obviously talking locally. That's what they'll air. They'll air the Bills game till the end, and then maybe switch over right after whistle blows at the end. But they'll show the Bills game. Most.
And just talking about the Amazon Prime broadcast and everything. What a shift with just the broadcast teams overall. This offseason, a lot of movement. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman on ESPN. I know a lot of people don't like Joe Buck, but he's one of those guys who's been around forever. He's considered one of the top in the business. I like that Monday Night Football will finally have a voice that is respected and not kind of – I like Steve Levy, but it never felt right that he was the voice of Monday Night Football and some of the weird things they had before them. Mike Tirico, Sunday Night Football, it's going to – drop down a little bit, not having Al Michaels, obviously one of the best in the business, but Mike Tirico, obviously been there, done that, doing Monday Night Football at ESPN. Al Michaels being Amazon Prime with Kirk Herbstreit, that's a little interesting. We'll see how Kirk does doing that.
Is that the official lineup for Prime?
So Prime, it's going to be Al and Kirk Herbstreit.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay.
It's going to be a little bit different this year with how we get our broadcast, and then obviously Fox. Not having Joe Buck in the lead anymore.
Yeah.
Think about all these.
I don't watch a lot of Fox, admittedly, with the Bills on CBS and like Primetime. So I only catch Fox on my and let's talk about Sunday Ticket for a second here. I know as of next year is going to go to Apple TV. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
so
dude, that's awesome though, because then
all this money, all the things that are changing, just beyond the Bills, the game presentation, gambling is becoming a much bigger part of these broadcasts. So the way we watch football is going to be dramatically different within the next 10 years based on all of these things that are happening at the current moment. So it really is pretty wild when you think about.
Yeah, there's a lot of different rules. Like you see that, like the Bills capped at 5 games, prime time, like so you can't go over 5. I think late in the year you can get a 6th if you're good at like by week 17 or 18.
You can have up to 7. You can
by the end of the year, right?
Yeah, so you
not
can
scheduled.
So you can have, I believe it's 5 scheduled.
5 scheduled.
Then you can have obviously the week 7, the last week of the season you can get flexed. And then obviously they have some of those games where you could be a Saturday, Sunday. So the Bills right now, they have their 5 night games, the 2 on Thursday night, Sunday night, 2 Monday Night Football. If you Detroit, Thanksgiving is a prime time. Some people are debate about that. I don't know what the technical.
I consider prime time anytime you're on alone nationally.
So if you count Detroit as prime time, that's 6. Then you have obviously the matchup against Miami that could get flexed to Saturday night. That could be 7. You have the possibility of the New England game at the last game of the season get flexed as well, depending on the situation.
Can it move up a whole day? That would be right?
8. And then you have not a standalone, but then you have the Kansas City 425 game on CBS, which is going to have Jim Nantz, Tony Romo. It's going to be the big game of the week. So the Bills essentially have 9 games that are going to be the focus of the NFL. More than half their schedule is spotlight games, and that doesn't even count games against Baltimore, Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen, or Pittsburgh, a team coming off a playoff appearance last year. So, and the 2 Miami games where you're talking about maybe your top competitor in the AFC East. So every week for this team is just going to be a big matchup. I haven't even mentioned Cleveland. I haven't mentioned the possibility of New England being a decent matchup. Minnesota could be a good team with Kirk Cousins. This schedule is full of so many intriguing games. And that's what happens when you're one of the best teams in the NFL. Every game you play is must-see TV. And I know we called the show Primetime Bills, and then now obviously the Bills Twitter handle is Primetime Bills. I don't want to say I got it before them, but we came up with the title of the show back on Monday and Tuesday in anticipation of what was going to happen on Thursday. But they truly are the primetime Bills, outside of maybe Kansas City, Green Bay, Tampa Bay with Tom Brady. Is there a more must-see team in the NFL right now? I don't think so.
I don't believe so. And obviously, like, if you wouldn't mind, everybody smash the like on your YouTube. It helps us bring out great content. Helps us really, gather data. So if you wouldn't mind hitting like on us right now, that is absolutely preferred. That'd be really great of you. We appreciate every one of you tuning in here today to our special schedule show. And we'll get into some matchups here for the second half of the show. But I see a lot of talk about it being national games and not prime time. I agree. Like, I got into this, I think it was last year or 2 years ago. Someone's like, well, that's not prime time. And I'm like, come on. Like we're using the term as featured national, whatever way you want to put it. Like the Bills are the only team you're watching on your TV at that time slot, at that specific day of the week. Like whether the Thanksgiving game's at noon, 4 or 8, it's a primetime game. Like it's literally a holiday. Everybody's off. And there's one game on your TV that you can enjoy watching, eating breakfast, brunch, lunch, dinner, your Thanksgiving turkey. It's the only game on, regardless of when your family or friends or whomever eat. So for me, it is prime time in a sense that whole day is prime time because it's everyone's together, everyone's gathering, and they're around one TV usually and watching. If they watch football, you wouldn't be tuning into our show, but they're watching the game. And it's usually, in this case, every year it's a Bills game on one of those 3 time slots. So to me, that's prime time, regardless of when it gets, what you consider prime time. Someone was like, it starts at like 7:30. Like, I'm like, back in the 70s, mate. Like, what do you off of what analytic do you get to, like, I don't know. For me, it's like a little bit like, nitpicky semantics, but ultimately the Bills play in front of a national audience and an international audience too, a lot. And owning Apple TV is going to bring more to that, and Prime is going to bring more to that, Mike. So
I think that Detroit game will be a great opportunity for Bills Mafia to travel too. By that point in the season, I doubt Detroit's going to really be playing for a ton in the NFC North. You're talking about a Bills fan base that loves to travel. Detroit is not a long drive if you can cut through Canada. A lot of people have off on Friday, making an extended weekend. Yeah, I think you could see. I'm not going to call a Bills Mafia takeover, but because there's a lot of intriguing matchups that they could target. But I could definitely see Bills Mafia well represented in Detroit for that game.
Yeah, I could too. And there's a lot of good things to enjoy about this schedule in general, and really breaking it down for some really good football games. The beginning of the stretch is going to be super competitive, Mike. Like there's going to be like such a good boom to the schedule to begin with. And it's great to get some of those out of the way so that you can hit your stride as some of the easier games come up later in the schedule. And that's just kind of how it's broken out right now. It seems to be seemingly, in Kansas City is the same way. It's seemingly a really tough beginning to the schedule. I think Kansas City plays the hardest starting schedule in NFL history. I think they start with 8 straight teams over 500. It's the first time ever. So like we can't sit here and complain either. Like our schedule is fairly tough, but we can't sit here and say others don't have to deal with it. But like then we get a bunch of division games later in the year, and conceivably those should be a little bit easier, like just based on the rest of the league and maybe the Jets.
We'll see. The Jets might be a little bit better than people.
That's what I was just going to say.
Miami, they could still be an 8-11 win team. New England, we all think they'll take a step backwards, but Bill Belichick, he finds a way to keep teams competitive regardless of who's playing. So, I mean, it's not guaranteed that it's going to be a super easy ride even late in the season. We think it's going to be, but who knows? Looking at the schedule, though, you're absolutely right, Kev. It is a gauntlet early when you're looking at the games. If not just the opponents, you're going to be on the road for quite a bit early in the year. You're going to be on the road against LA, road Miami, road Baltimore, road Kansas City. That's 4 of your first 6 games in on the road. And the one thing that I do hope for Bill season ticket holders is that they get a better weather season at home than what they experienced last year, because I know it's football. You play in the conditions and you got to make the most of it. But it was a lousy season last year from a fan perspective. The wind, the rain, the combination of the both, the snow at some points, it was just miserable in the stands. And I'm hoping getting a Monday night primetime in September, a Halloween primetime against Green Bay in October. Hopefully we'll get some good weather for those, so Bills Mafia can not only have a good time seeing their Bills, but also have a comfortable time watching their Bills.
Yeah, and let's get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty of the schedule, and obviously, you guys sharing your predictions or what you like to talk about with the schedule, and we'll get into a little bit more like what you've already talked about enough. We don't want to be redundant here as we're 24 hours in, but we don't want to get crazy, so we put the schedule up here on the screen, and there's some focal points I wanted to focus on here. Like if you take a look at the schedule, you kind of notice that division heavy ending. Look at that 12-1 New England. You got 12-11 the Jets. You got 12-17/18th against Miami. You have that ending game against New England again. So it's kind of like that New England stretch last year. It was a little tighter last year, but you have 2 New England games in the matter of 6 games. So you're gonna finish off strong against them. You have, you're penciled in by a Jets and a Dolphins game in there as well. And then obviously you have the Dolphins game earlier on in the season. But in your first, before that Sunday night against Green Bay, you have 1 division game. So, you're kind of really back in the schedule. And if you look at it, like, yes, the Jets might be better than they are last year. They may be good. They may have a Browns-like turn or a Bengals-like turnaround. I don't know. So maybe the Packers suck without Adams and some of the moves that they made. We can't just assume that the Packers are going to be the same 12-5 style team that they've always been. So I think that, strength of schedule is tough to debate right now, but if you take a look at the schedule up on the screen, there's plenty to break down. And that game against the Baltimore sitting right there on a 1:00 game on the road, that's a difficult stretch. You're looking at LA. You're looking at, I'm not even talking about strength of schedule. I'm just in general. That's a tough stretch. You're talking about at LA, home against Tennessee. To me, on a Monday night, I don't believe they're as good as they were, but we'll see. You have, the Miami game, which could be competitive again this year. You have that Baltimore. You have Pittsburgh, who should be uncompetitive, but you never really know right now. And then you have that Kansas City bye into Green Bay, which is nice. Like, that's a very challenging schedule, Mike. What is your prediction right now on how that goes away? That's 2, 4, in the first real 8 weeks. What are you thinking about?
Yeah, that's really tough to pick, because you're going to see a lot of Bills fans picking records like 13-4, 14-3. There might be some people even picking 15-2 this year. But whenever you run models and you do the probability, even when you play a lower rated opponent, it's not a guarantee you're going to pull out a victory. There's always a few games each year where you lose to a lesser team, just like the Bills last year with Jacksonville. So in that opening 7, could they win all 7? Yeah, they absolutely could. I would expect probably a 5-2 mark following the Green Bay. 5-2. I wouldn't say 4-3 couldn't happen, though. It's entirely possible you could lose against the Rams. Possible that you could split the Ravens. Ravens and lose a pair out of the Ravens, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Green Bay. So I don't want to ever say 3-4, 4-3 is likely, but it's possible. I would say 5-2 seems like the most realistic option, just because when you're playing the Rams, Green Bay, Kansas City, that's going to be 3 tough games regardless of how the Bills get out of the gates. And you never know with Miami, Tennessee, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh. So 4-3, 5-2, I'm gonna lean more 5-2.
And it's a good question about Baltimore. Like, to me, like how good is Baltimore going to be? They always seem to be lacking, and the Bills are really good against running quarterbacks, in my opinion. I think they do a really good job with their scheme, their zone, their gap penetration. I think they do a really good job with running quarterbacks personally. Just the way that they defend, and then the fact that Baltimore really doesn't have any annoying level receivers to me. Like, could they develop some this year? Yeah, it's possible. Marquise Brown was good and they got rid of him. They traded him away, got a good amount for him. But, now we're talking about Rashad Bateman and Devin Duvernay and, James Prochet. And, there's just some names there that just, I don't know about you, Mike. They don't overly make me nervous.
This is going
So
to state the obvious, but what you can say about the first 7 games of the slate for the Bills is that each one of those teams presents something that could be a challenge or something to look out for. When you're talking about the Rams, obviously you got Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, you got a great pass rush led by Aaron Donald, and you got a decent secondary with Jalen Ramsey. Tennessee, you got Derrick Henry. You're going to pound. Are the Bills going to be physical? Are they going to match the physicality of the Titans? Miami, we can laugh all about Tua all we want, but they have Tyreek Hill now, and they have Jalen Waddle on the other side of the field. And you're going to need some speed to keep up with those wideouts. They might not try to go over the top on you, but all it takes is a 5-yard slant, and you got some space, and you can take that to the house. So Miami does present some more issues now than what they did in the past. Still would take the Bills confidently. Baltimore, Lamar Jackson. He might not have the wideouts. He might not need the wideouts. He can do a lot by himself. The Bills have had a lot of success against stopping him in the past, but you never know. Pittsburgh, their defense gave Bills all type of problems last year. I think the Bills have some answers for what the Steelers gave the Bills in the home opener in 2021, but it's still the Steelers. They're always competitive even when they're not a good team. Kansas City, you're going to have Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. And I mean, you cannot take any Kansas City granted at all. And then Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers. So all those 7 games present something that could be difficult for the Bills. So obviously the Bills present a lot of challenges to other teams. So it's not that the Bills should be scared of those teams, but you can't take any of those games for granted.
No, certainly not. And I just think that, like, even when it comes to anybody, you can't take it for granted. And, Baltimore decided to not address their offense, which I still think is pretty interesting. They took a center, good for them in Lindenbaum. But I just don't like the weapons on that roster. They have some tight ends that you have to worry about, but I just think it just doesn't present enough challenges for an NFL offense in 2022 to be overly worried about them. Like, you're talking about Mark Andrews, Nick Boyle. Okay. Like, sure. Like, Mark Andrews does present some challenges. Gus the Bus, Edwards, J.K. Dobbins they're coming back from injury. Mike Davis signed there. So there's some talent there, but I don't know. To me, it's just not a game that I'm overly worried about at all. Yeah. So
I agree. Baltimore's banking on the fact that last year was a fluke due to injuries.
We'll see.
That's what they're banking on. And I would tend to say I agree with them. I think Baltimore is probably the best team in the AFC North. People can laugh. People might anoint Cincinnati to that since they've won the AFC Championship last year and went to the Super Bowl. But I'm still not ready to say not ready to say Cincinnati is better than Baltimore. That's 1 year. We've seen teams that are 1-year wonders and then fall back to earth. I think Cincinnati is good. I just think they haven't done it over a sustained period of time.
Fair.
Cleveland could be dangerous in the AFC North. Pittsburgh, who knows? I mean, if they can get some decent quarterback play. I mean, they had one of the crappiest quarterbacks in the league last year in Big Ben, and they found a way to make the playoffs. So I think the North is honestly one of the most intriguing divisions in football this upcoming season. But I understand why you might be lower on Baltimore. I'm putting a lot of expectations into the fact that having Lamar Jackson back, having some of their other guys back will make a big impact for them.
Yeah, and to me, Pittsburgh, then you match up with Pittsburgh there in the beginning of the season. That's just not going to have a team that's going to get it going. No Juju. They're battling a rookie quarterback versus Mitchell Trubisky. There's just, to me, nothing overly threatening by Pittsburgh. Obviously, at home, especially, as you mentioned, you can't sleep on anybody. But I just don't think that you see too much there out of that Pittsburgh roster that worries you. Hence, that game used to be a primetime game with the Bills. Now it's just a standard, what everybody wants, run-of-the-mill home game. So I'm not overly concerned by that game either. I think the Bills should take away those 2 AFC North opponents early on in this season to kind of round out that schedule. You're still looking at a team that does have Pickens and Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. So they did try to overhaul that. The offensive line's always been a mess in Pittsburgh. Najee Harris is pretty good, but other than that, the quarterback position's meh. And we'll see what they're able to do. And they've always seemed to struggle in the secondary. Levi Wallace is starting there now. How does Levi Wallace match up against those lengthy and speedy Bills receivers? We know he has his challenges. He struggled in big stretches. Terrell Edmonds has had his problems. So I just don't overly see, I don't overly see a lot of challenges from Pittsburgh right now this season. So I do believe, this is the part of the show, Mike, that I want to get into and put on early season, May 13th, schedule predictions. We're going to go down each game quickly. We don't need a huge breakdown of every battle. We'll get into that later in the season toward training camp. And we'll have our crossover guests. I was on Let's Talk Jets with Tyson Rauch, a really good Jets guy. I encourage you to check out Let's Talk Jets. I was on their show talking to Jets fans. Next time when we have him on, need you guys to come. He will bring some Jets fans, so I need you guys to do your business and take care of business for me on the Bills front. And then come over to me and bother their feed sometime too. They're pretty high on that roster right now. But anyways, we'll break down matchups later, Mike. We want to go game by game real quickly. I'm going to tally up our final records. You guys can agree or disagree, and that's kind of how I want to do the last 20 minutes. Mike, how's that sound?
It sounds good. What I will say is when I normally do this exercise, the number that I will get going game by game will probably not match up to the number I actually pick if I had to pick a season prediction. So game by game, I might end up at a 15-2. Then when I actually make the prediction, probably be 13-4, 12-5 or something like that. But game by game, this is when it gets a little nutty for me. So.
All right, let's do it. Everybody, if you could follow all of our accounts, that'd be great. Facebook, Mike's got a good presence going on there. Or TikTok, we're becoming slightly TikTok viral at times. So if you wouldn't mind following our TikTok, as well as some of our great promo videos, and hopefully you'll have an intro video here on this show for you next week as well. So stay tuned to all of that. But it's time to bring back up our handy dandy schedule for everyone to take a look at and kind of chat about it with us and see who's more positive, who's more negative, and what you guys are kind of thinking about as we go through the schedule here. So starting off, we kind of talked about some of these games already, but the LA game, Mike, don't need a huge breakdown. Is that a W or is that an early L?
I'm feeling confident. I'm going to put a W right there.
Okay, I got a W as well to that game. It's my lucky game. It's my lucky day. I got a W. The Bills starting off 1-0. Coming home for Tennessee. Talked about that a little bit. How are we feeling?
I'm feeling good. It's a home opener, Monday Night Football. The crowd is going to be alive at New Era Stadium. Oh, can't call it New Era Stadium. Highmark Stadium.
Highmark.
Oh, my goodness. But, yeah, crowd's going to be alive. It's going to be a fun time, and the Bills are just a simply better team. Tennessee's given them problems in the past, but they don't have the same pieces anymore.
And they now that after that, the 9:25, they go to the stadium that Josh Allen built in Miami. They just can't keep the guy down. Mike, does Miami have enough this season with Tyreek Hill to get it done, to finally get over the humps of non-rookie quarterback Josh Allen?
They have enough to pull an upset, but they don't have enough to get me to pick an upset. So I'm going to go Bills with the W.
So Mike's got a 3. This hard schedule, Mike's got to start in 3-0. I as well do not think that Miami ever threatens it. Good weather. Josh Allen plays. We talk about this, and we will talk about this on this show, weather and as it pertains to the Bills passing game. Josh Allen plays great against medium to lesser opponents. He also plays great in good conditions. Both are going to be in a factor in this week 3 game and on CBS at 1:00. I got the Bills 3-0 as well, Mike. So we both have a 3-0 stretch into that talked about Baltimore game we talked about for a few minutes. What do you got going on there after that's all said and done?
See, this is the point in the schedule where if I wasn't going game by game, I would probably make the assumption that the Bills will lose one of
these 4:
Miami, Baltimore, Tennessee, and the Rams. So my reality, the actual pick, I don't have them starting 4-0, but going game by game basis, I have the Bills beating Baltimore. They've handled Lamar Jackson in the past. He's a limited quarterback from a passing perspective at times when he can't get his legs. And I think the Bills will find a way to contain him.
I don't think Baltimore is very good. I've already talked about that. I have the Bills starting 4-0 in this stretch here. And I do have the Bills taking care of business here against a Baltimore offense that just might get it going in the running game. I just don't think they can keep up with the top echelon offenses in the league. I kind of agree with Mike's sentiment that they will go 3-1 in this stretch. I think that that's fair. I think that that's accurate. They could, it's not outlandish to say they start 3-2. It's really not. It's the meatier part of their schedule here. I don't think it's that crazy to say they could drop a game or two here and really pick up some steam later on in the season. But I have them winning this one as well. We both have them starting 4-0, Mike, and into Pittsburgh at home, 1 o'clock, 10-9. So kind of after those 2 straight primetime games, we're starting to get into the meat of the 1 o'clockers. So how are you feeling about that Pittsburgh home game, second home game of the year?
Well, I mean, if I picked them against Baltimore, and I had some concerns about Baltimore, I got to pick them to beat Pittsburgh here. Who knows who the quarterback's going to be? Is it going to be Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett? Don't know for sure at that. Pittsburgh's given Josh Allen trouble in the past. Even in the wins against the Steelers, they've found ways to slow him down for the majority of the time. So I'm going to go Bills W here, but if Pittsburgh ends up getting off to a better offensive start than what people expect, might be more of a game than what we think at this current moment.
I don't think Pittsburgh's very good. I don't think the AFC North is good at all. Like, I think the Bengals on the road will present some challenges on Monday Night Football later on. We'll get to that soon. I just don't think Pittsburgh's very good. I do think it isn't crazy to, once again, to say they'd be 4-1, 3-2 here. It really isn't. But individually, I'm not going to pick the Steelers here. I don't think that that's the team that gets it done at any point. I do think if they lost one, it's week 1. It's most likely week 1. I think that's the most likely L spot. And Mike and I both had a W there. So I have them starting out 5-0 as well. Mitchell Trubisky just isn't going to have enough at that point, and I just don't believe the rookie quarterback from Pitt is going to be ready in time in Pickens. So to me, I have too much needing to gel there in Pittsburgh. That could be a scarier matchup later in the year. I'm actually glad that one isn't week 1 or week 15. I'm glad it's kind of where it is. And that's the one game I'm actually kind of happy where it's sitting. I don't think they'll have everything figured out there in Pittsburgh at this stage. So I got them. Mike, we both have them at 5-0 going into the at Kansas City 425 CBS game. Is this where the revamped Chiefs offense, is this where you're going to go with their first loss or no?
This is where I am going to go with the first loss. I do think the Bills can beat Kansas City, and I don't think Kansas City is as intimidating without Tyreek Hill. But I can't pick the Bills to go 17-0. That I don't have that in me. And after we're done with this, I want to have an actual serious prediction that's not a game-by-game approach because obviously game-by-game approach, I don't want to pick a matchup that I think that they're simply better than another team. But, yeah, Kansas City Bills, pretty even on paper, could go either way, but this will be the first loss of their season.
And I think it's one of Mahomes' only preseason not favored at home ever. So the Bills are favored by 5 points average in every game this year, which is the most in the NFL. Obviously, they have all the predictions on their side. They have all the gambling stuff on their side. A lot of people say they have to prove it. I think they were able to prove it. Whether they drop a couple of these or not doesn't really change the fact that they will be favored in every game outside of a brutal couple losses in a row. That'll change things. I do not have the Bills losing to Kansas City. I don't think they're good. I think they regressed. I think that they have a better chance to lose at Miami week 3. And I'm not kidding. I don't think Kansas City's that good right now. I think the Bills are able to go in there and handle business. I think outside of a 13 seconds, they handled business. That defense is still poor to me. They got worse on offense. Their starting offense right now is Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Mecole Hardman, and Juju Smith-Schuster. That's going to take a downfall if any of those get hurt, especially. They do have Sky Moore, a guy we really wanted here in Buffalo. But, to me, I just don't like enough of what that defense is doing right now as well. Let's talk about their defense, too. I know Patrick Mahomes is going to get his. I'm not as concerned with that defense. I think it's struggling. They lost Tyrann Mathieu. When he went out of the game last year, it was a huge loss to the Kansas City defense. I'm just not overly shocked by the secondary that consists of Juan Thornhill, Rashad Fenton, Trent McDuffie, and L'Jarius Sneed. It's just not one that makes me stay awake at night. So to me, I agree, though. There's probably a fair chance that the team's 4-2 going into the bye. Like, I don't think that's that crazy. But I have them 6-0 because on a game-to-game basis, I do believe that they take care of the Kansas City Chiefs. Into the bye week, we all get to relax. We all get to enjoy the games that week. Going into the Green Bay game at home, Sunday Night Football, Mike, potentially, if Green Bay is what they think they could be, and the Bills are what we think they could be, a preview that everyone's been talking about for a year or two now of a Super Bowl prediction. So how are you feeling Sunday Night Football at home? One of the biggest games here, biggest regular season game at home ever. So what's your opinion?
Yeah, this game is one that everyone is circling on the calendars, mostly because it's an opportunity in the prime time against one of the storied franchises in the NFL that simply doesn't come to Buffalo that often. Last time the Bills hosted Green Bay was the Mario Williams strip sack game that led to Doug Marone's 9-7 season before he left the Bills. That was a fun one. Before that, Brett Favre came to Buffalo. I was at that game as a younger person, but Green Bay has never won a game in Buffalo throughout their entire franchise history, and I think it's going to stay that way. I respect the Packers, but I think the Bills are the better overall team. I am more confident that the Bills are going to win this game than I am about the Baltimore Pittsburgh, Tennessee stretch where I think they could drop a game there. I just feel that coming off a bye, which Sean McDermott has a great track record with, the Bills will be prepared for this contest.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair enough. So Mike's got him 6-1 going into the Jets game. For me, I'm going to give the Bills their first loss. I think the Bills are going to take it on the chin from a really good Aaron Rodgers performance here at home. I think it's going to be hyped up. I think you might see a little jittery Josh at times. We've seen it. We have seen it. And, we'll see if weather by 10:30 is a factor. Not talking about, 7 feet of snow. I'm talking about some rain, some elements, some coldness that does affect it, maybe even more than that snow. Can't have them go, and just like you did earlier with Kansas City, can't have them going to 15 million and 0. So I do have them losing this game. And I think it's fairly conceivable to say they'd be 5-3, 6-2 at this time, going into the easy part of their schedule. So I'd be on track for a 17-0 record if I had them beating Green Bay. And I think it's a fair place to take a loss, and it's a legitimate place. One thing goes wrong, one turnover, one fumble, one bad special teams play. We've seen it. That's all it takes against an evenly matched up game. And I do believe that the Bills will lose this one. Green Bay will break that and get their first win. And the Bills will be ready for them if they do match up with them in the playoffs. But that off, we'll see. This is life without Devontae Adams. This is life without some of his weapons. We have to see how Christian Watson, Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb, Sammy Watkins, perform there in Green Bay. It could be one that maybe looking back on it, when I look at my schedule prediction in 6 months, I don't feel good about because that offense isn't clicking. And I slept on whoever. But I just don't believe Kansas City or Green Bay does have the ability to not be as good as we think they could be, especially if they have any defensive lapses like they've been known to have, and some offensive line problems with some of their guys that they've had to move on from. They're starting offensive lines, Royce Newman, Josh Myers, and John Runyon. We'll see how the interior line's able to protect Aaron Rodgers all season long there without one of his best weapons that he's ever had. So we'll see how that turns out as we get into the Jets game, Mike. At the Jets, do you have anything goofy here? Because I don't.
We can just pass this one.
Okay, we'll pass this off. It was a dub. Both have the same record going into the Vikings. Anything goofy going on in the Vikings game?
Oh, the Vikings are better than a lot of people give them credit.
Justin Jefferson, you're gonna hit us with the gritty.
I'm not gonna. I don't have. I can't pick Minnesota, but I do respect them. Kirk Cousins he's that borderline top 10, top 12 quarterback that he has some good games, but if he has a good one, he could maybe give the Bills a contest, but I don't have it in me to actually pick Minnesota.
Okay. I think I agree with Mike. I think they could be sneaky. And the funny part about Minnesota's are not consistent. There's games where they beat Green Bay or they've struggled with them in the past, recent past. And then there's games they lose to the Bears. Like they can beat Dallas, they can beat New Orleans. I don't necessarily think that. I think you can get a scary Minnesota team. They have enough firepower with Thielen, with Justin Jefferson, with Dalvin Cook. It is at times an offense that gets going. Like they have their challenges and their warts, but they're definitely a scary place for some redemption here that Minnesota wants to get back at the Bills for Josh Allen leaping over him. I just don't think they're consistent enough to get it done. I can't pick them, but I would not be shocked if they're able to get it done in a 1-game stretch with some turnovers. So getting into Cleveland here. So I do have the Bills there. Cleveland, Mike, anything goofy? Mike wants to say something goofy.
I'm going to pick the Browns here. A lot of people are going to probably laugh at me for picking the Browns. I think it depends who the quarterback is. If it's Deshaun Watson, I think the Browns could be one of the top teams in football. And I obviously they're not getting the hype right now because they were a disaster last season, but I think people are forgetting how good they were 2 years ago. They have one of the best running attacks in the NFL. They just added Deshaun Watson. You added Amari Cooper. Their defense is halfway decent when they're showing up to work. I can't pick the Bills to win every game. Going into it, like realistically, like I said earlier, I'm thinking the Bills are probably like a 13-4 type team. So this head-to-head matchup, I'm not going to get down to 13-4. So I need to pick a game that's going to go to an opponent. So I'm going to pick the Browns in this one, but we'll see if it's Jacoby Brissett or Baker Mayfield.
I think it being, yeah, that's what I agree with, dude. If it's Jacoby Brissett, I can't pick them. I see where you're coming from if Watson's still eligible. Jacoby Brissett on the road in Buffalo with the crowd, with potentially weather on 11/20. There's no way I can pick Brissett and the Browns in this game. I have the Bills winning here pretty handedly. But you're right. If Watson plays, that becomes scary real quickly.
I think the Bills are the better team easily. It's just I'm not going to pick them to do better than 15-2 or 14-3. I had to pick a loss, and I already had the Bills taking down Green Bay and LA. So there's not many more options out there. There's realistically only one or two other games past this that I can even pick as a loss.
And that's a good point. I didn't know. I guess if it is a certain amount of game suspension, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 game suspension with the bye in there, yeah, it's possible. We'll see how that plays out. That it could be his first game. I'm not thinking that that's a bad thing though. I think that him playing his first game in a year and a half, they might have better odds with Brissett there for a couple of weeks as he's finally eligible to play. We'll see what it looks like for them and what their record is, but I can't be scared by a declining Amari Cooper, a Jamarcus Bradley, a Jakeem Grant, a David Bell, a Donovan Peoples-Jones.
It's not the passing attack; it's the running game.
Behind that,
it's the running attack. You got Nick Chubb, and you're talking about a Bills defense that struggles against some of the better running teams.
Fine. No, you're fair points. Fair points. If they have Deshaun Watson playing and he's going and he's clicking, I think it's a fair place to get in out.
If there's the team, if you're gonna point out what are the teams that the Bills struggle against, besides obviously like Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City and Tom Brady and the Bucks, because they light up everybody, you would say their kryptonite last year at least was against power running teams that can kill clock and keep long sustainable drives. Indianapolis killed them that way. New England the first time gave them trouble. I know Derrick Henry only had a couple big runs in the Tennessee game, and that there should have been a holding on the one long touchdown, but it still counts the same. He had, I believe, 3 touchdowns last year against the Bills, and I know the second half they opened up the passing game, but teams that can run the ball against the Bills are a threat. And then you add in a solid top 5 quarterback potentially to that. That could have some issues. We'll see.
Yeah, and Mike is sleeping on Daquan Jones. He's sleeping on Ed Oliver.
I'm not sleeping. I'm obviously talking about the past. I love the new guys. I love the revamped line, but I still have to see.
Boogie Basham's supposed to be like the best player on the team now. Like, come on, Mike. We'll What's going on? We'll see. Boogie Basham's a good run stopper. We'll see if he's able to develop to literally jokingly to this point. Daquan Jones is here for this reason. They did handpick him, gave him a little bit more money to come play in Buffalo. So I do think that that's a fair point to bring up about Daquan Jones. He is their handpicked new nose tackle, defensive tackle. We'll see where he one tack. We'll see exactly what he looks like here soon. You got Greg Rousseau developing. His presence has been big. Von Miller's presence. You got a double team Von. You have AJ Epinesa, Jordan Phillips, Tim Settle, Boogie Basham. Eli Anku at times was decent and times down the stretch. Shaq Lawson. There's some names here. The defensive line was revamped with veterans and some young players. It is a great unit. If that unit clicks, the Bills are winning the Super Bowl. I don't think any questions. If that unit comes to fruition with Settle, Jones, Oliver, Vaughn, Greg, Rousseau, Bush, Boogie Basham, if it doesn't, we could be having some problem. We could have the same discussion next year. But if it does, this team's winning the Super Bowl. This team is winning the Super Bowl if this defensive line, as built with backups in Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson, who have been good in stretches, this roster is deep enough. This defensive line position is deep enough to win the Super Bowl alone. It's that good of a defensive unit if it comes together. And Greg Rousseau, I love the point on Greg Rousseau, and he is one of the best run-stopping defensive ends in the league. So I do think you'll see some definite improvement at that front, your definite sacks number. And it was funny that we all go after like pressures and stuff. And this pertains to some of these games we're talking about here, as you're talking about trying to get to Aaron Rodgers. You're talking about if Deshaun Watson plays, the pressure, Brandon Beane himself said, great, but we need the sacks out of himself. He said it just recently, a couple of weeks ago. So to me, I think that shows that, like, yes, pressures are important, and it shows that maybe they're getting unlucky in stretches. And analytics say the Bills were decent at rushing the passer. You still need to get the quarterback down at the end of the day. So I think that it helps there. The Bills are that deep at this defensive line unit with 9 great players. And that's not including players like Mike Love, Brandon Bryan, and Eli Anku, who they're probably going to stash on their practice squad. So, and that's with their 9 defensive linemen. So I do think that we'll see a revamped, and their problem might be somewhere else this year. It ain't going to be at cornerback 2. We've all seen the 2 embeddeds with Elam and what he's going to be, able to do here for the Bills and Kaiir Elam. Like, having a real cornerback 2, I didn't think the Bills would ever invest in it. I've wanted it for years. I've wanted to replace Levi Wallace pretty much since his first season. I'm excited to see with this pass rush with Kaiir Elam what the Bills are able to do, Mike. So it's really interesting to me on the defensive front to get the number 1 rated defense back with Elam and Jones and Von Miller and their same everybody other Pro Bowlers across there. Like, Mike, that is so interesting to me as we hit into. I have the Bills taking care of Cleveland easily. I do think that there's legitimate concerns that Watson doesn't play this year. I think you won't see him again until next year. Hence that salary reduction. They did that for a reason. That wasn't just for fun. They did that because there's legitimate chance his contract really doesn't kick in until next year. And he's going to spend really time served last year and probably another year suspension in trade, basically 2 years in trade to play next year.
Yeah,
that's kind of my.
Yeah,
you change your prediction. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But and maybe I would too if Watson is playing and is eligible. That could change some things as well. And at least in the game prediction standpoint, we're going into Detroit 12:30 p.m. on a Thanksgiving day. We're all getting our day started. Mike, any worry there against Jared Goff?
The only thing interesting about this matchup is whether I will make the drive to go see it in person or if I'm going to watch it on TV. So I've already talked to the wife about the possibility of maybe going to see it. So just trying to see if that's a possibility or not. But yeah, the Bills are going to win and most likely win.
Are the rules driving through Canada pretty easy now? I don't even know.
I think it's back to normal for the most part. Okay. So if it is, yeah, by Thanksgiving, hopefully everything will be smooth sailing. So,
oh man, I'll have a newborn, so my away games won't happen this year, guys. So I'm gonna have to live vicariously through all your tweets and all your all you guys. I will not be attending road games. For me, I will be making that Sunday night football game and maybe others later in the year, but that's gonna be my big day out. I'm not gonna be able to hit the road games this year, so you guys have a good time doing that. And I don't have any worries that Detroit team's just nowhere near the Bills. I don't think there's any even worry there. I think the Bills will be up for that. They're not going to get caught off guard like in Jacksonville. I think that this is definitely an easy victory for sure. So we got a good point from George McGorsh. Saffold will single-handedly fix the running game. Appreciate the super chat, George. I agree with you. I think that the Bills did amazing work on the trenches. Some underrated work. We're all talking about Elam. We're all talking about Groot is development. We're talking about is Boogie Basham the next developmental defensive end that's going to come through, like Jerry Hughes light, or in terms of like what's he able to do this year. And Boogie Basham was a pretty highly regarded player, but we're forgetting what the Bills are able to do on the offensive line, matching Rick Bates, as well as signing Roger Saffold. The second he was cut, he was like their number 1 target. So that's a good point that I don't think it's talked enough about on our show, on any show, that the Bills offensive line will be much better this year, thus helping the run game, thus helping Cook, thus helping Singletary, thus obviously helping Josh Allen. That goes without saying. But yeah, I completely agree that Roger Saffold might go down as one of the most underrated free agent signings for the Bills this season and maybe in the NFL. We'll see what Roger Saffold's able to green, but that's a really good point where he's going to be able to potentially fix the running game and be that missing link to help the Bills play. So age aside, I know he's older. That doesn't really affect me in terms of like what I think he's able to do this year. I'm not talking about 10 years from now. I'm talking about this year alone. All right, Mike. So we got to get into the remaining games here. New England, Thursday night football, back-to-back Thursday games. Anything to worry about? You off Mac Jones? Are you feeling good about all their running backs? They have like 50 like backup running backs. Like, what are you feeling about with New England?
Yeah, I don't know how you feel on this, but I'm going to just count New England and the Jets as wins. So
I stop there, Mike. You got them losing to Miami. You got them losing to
I just want
Miami?
to go straight to Miami right now. Honestly,
Okay.
I know New
All
England
right.
was a playoff team last year. You got to give them respect for everything they've done during Bill Belichick's time. But Mac Jones is their quarterback. They caught magic last year, not because of Mac. He played solid. He played solid for a rookie. I guess there's an opportunity for him to take a step forward, but he was one of those guys where I don't think his ceiling is as high because some of his
Agreed.
limitations. He's going to be good. I don't think he'll ever be great. New England, will their defense be one of the top 5 in the NFL again? We'll see. If they're not, if they have any regression, I think the Bills will cruise over them like they have the last 2 times. The Jets, we know what they are. Might be improved, but they're still the Jets. So, in my opinion, win-win. Let's go to Miami.
Okay. Win-win. Let's go to Miami. I agree with you. I'm down on New England as I am Baltimore. I don't think that they're going to get it done. I think the Jets could give the Bills a harder game. I think Mike wants to talk about this Miami game for a reason. They could give him a harder game here. Mike, bounce it over to you. I do have 2 wins, though, back to back. We both have them at 11-1 at this point, I think.
I gave them a loss against Cleveland.
Sorry.
So
You
10.
did.
So with 4 left, I'm at 11-2. So
Okay.
with the Miami game, I'm gonna give the Bills a win. I don't see the Dolphins coming to Buffalo in December
No
and
way.
finding a way to win
No
an
way.
important game. They don't win those
No.
games.
No.
At least in recent years, they haven't against Josh Allen. And this is going to be a big one probably for Miami. I think the Dolphins are a team that will be in the wild card race late in the season. Will they make it? Probably not, but they could. And this is going to be an important one that could potentially get flexed to a Saturday
Yep.
evening, Saturday afternoon. It's a week before Christmas Eve. It's, as you can see on the schedule, it's to be determined. Will it be Sunday or Saturday? You look at the other 4 games that it's going up against. This is going to be a Saturday game. So the most exciting thing I think about this is another primetime possibility for the Bills. But I'm going to give it a win, improve them to 12-2.
Okay, I do too. Until Miami beats the Bills underneath their new playing style, like they've almost lost a million games in a row to the Bills. Josh Allen just deals against them. Could one of these games turn into a hurricane, rain, wind, storm / snow bowl? Yeah, I mean, sure. At some point, sure, that Jets game could, that Miami game could, and the Bills could lose. Like, I guess those are conceivable, but we're not talking about like that style of thing here. I have the Bills beating Miami. Like, I just do. Getting into I talked about them a little bit earlier. I just don't love him. I think Hill might bring some challenges if he's still playing and he's not complaining for the ball at that point. If there's not any, Jalen Waddle, you got some things to be worried about a little bit, but they've got no depth. They've got no picks in the pipeline. To me, like, I'm just not worried by that team until they prove it to me that they're able to get it done and not lose 8 in a row and then win 8 in a row, then lose 8 in a row. Like, I just don't see it out of this Miami team that, to me, I've never been really overly worried about Josh Boyer, the defensive coordinator, Danny Crossman. There's just not any coordinators there that really scare me to be able to get it done. Terran Armstead is a good player. Good point by Greg. I just can't ever predict the Bills to lose to the Dolphins ever. Like, it will happen, I'm sure. Like, I'm sure it will, but I'm just never going to predict it. Josh Allen absolutely annihilates that roster. Like, the stats are staggering. I think I tweet them every time they play them, but I just don't see it. So Mike, we're
better not allow
here.
41 points, Greg. If the Bills defense allows 41 points against Miami, I'm going to lose it. So
my rant I went on about the D line is just totally would be miffed if they let up 41 about what I think that the Bills defensive line could be this year if it all clicks.
If the Bills allow 41 against Miami, I'm not going to have much hope going into the playoffs.
Yeah, unless they're really good. Unless we're wrong and Miami's really good. I don't know. Maybe 61-41 would be a fun score. I think the league would like that a little bit. We're getting into Chicago. This would be a trendy loss. It's Christmas. They want to get home to their kids and families. The Bills have been winning a lot. This could be a spot on the road to take a loss. I just can't with that Chicago offense, dude. It's one of the worst ones in the league.
I have no faith in Justin Fields at this point. I hope he surprises me. I want to pick
Chicago.
Yeah, I was high out of Ohio State on him, but it was a struggle last year, and he really didn't show me a ton. Maybe he takes a step up this year, but they're just so far behind the Bills. They were better when they had Mitchell Trubisky. We'll see if the Justin Fields experiment works. But right now, that's a win for the Bills, setting up a Monday Night Football game against Cincinnati, January 2nd. Could there be home field advantage? Could there be seeding on the line in this game? Kev, what do you have?
I just can't have the Bills winning 40 straight down the stretch. I think that they'll get caught off guard here by somebody. I think this could be the spot. They could get caught off on a very close game like Tennessee was last year, but this one is at Cincinnati and 1-2. It's cold out. The Bills have won a lot in a row. I think it'll be good for them to take some type of like real humbling experience. I think that they'll sleep on it a little bit in terms of, but they get up for these games. But I just can't have them winning like 10 straight here, Mike. So I'm going to go with Cincinnati here. More of like a group loss, though, with like, I just can't have them winning 6 in a row. Yeah. I think this is a spot that a practical spot for an L.
I'm going to join you with that just because I told you before this experiment that I think realistically the Bills are going to go 13-4. So right now I have them at, I believe, 13-2. So this is going to be the loss to get to 13-3.
So you're close.
I know you know how I love Joey Burrow. There's only one person I've ever bought a jersey for that's a non-Buffalo Bill. It's Joe Burrow. For all you Cover One people that don't know this, I called his first ever game in high school on the radio. I used to do Athens Bulldogs football games when I was in college at Ohio University. So Joe Burrow is someone I've known for over a decade. I've followed his whole career. Never thought he'd be number one pick, Heisman Trophy, national champion, undefeated LSU senior quarterback. But here we are, and damn, he's a special talent. But if this game were to mean something, I'm probably picking the Bills. For the sake of this exercise, I'm going to go Bengals.
Yeah, we'll see what this looks like. I didn't love their draft. I personally didn't like the Dax Hill pick. I thought Cam Taylor-Britt was a guy I did like. They kind of took him early. In the second round, they did try to totally revamp safety and Tyson Anderson. They needed to revamp that secondary. So, we'll kind of see how that all plays out. Realistically, I don't think that defense is very good. We'll see how it comes together this year. Right across the board, you're talking about Sam Hubbard, DJ Reader, BJ Hill, Trey Hendrickson, who's good. But, a lot of that, Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, Awuzie, Von Bell, Jesse Bates is good. Eli Applesauce, Daxton Hill could be good. I just don't love that defense. I don't know that they can get it done. They got lucky. They had like 8 straight turnovers bounce their way, 7 straight like game-winning field goals or whatever it was, whatever those stats are.
That got hot at the right time. I told you early on last season, Kev, that I thought Cincinnati would be a surprising team. When I said that, though, I didn't think they were going to be a playoff team that would then go to the Super Bowl. I thought they might win 8-9 games, and people thought that was crazy, but that's how special of a talent that Joe Burrow is. His instinct, his ball placement, it's extraordinary. And as you saw, his leadership skills took that team to another level. But they also got extremely lucky at certain points during the playoffs.
Very lucky statistically.
I think they're a team that it could go either way. They might take another step forward or they might have a slight regression. But good for them to finally have some meaningful football games to watch. They've tried to address their offensive line. Will it work out? We'll see. But they have spent some money on fixing it in their minds.
Alex Kappa, Ted Karras, Lael Collins, Jonah Williams is a guy they really liked in 19, first-round pick. Jackson Carman's a guy they start. So we'll see. There's still many questions there to how that puzzle piece goes together. So leading us into our last game, Mike, of the day, New England 1-7 or 1-8 versus them. Is there anything on the line? We've talked about this. You have to take that into effect. The Bills seem to do pretty well here at the end of the season each year, except that one Jets loss where they didn't really play anybody. What do you got here? Do you think New England needs this game? The Bills don't. You think the Bills bury them? What do you?
Well, for the sake of this exercise, I told you I'm going to pick the Bills to go 13-4 regardless. So right now I'm at 13-3. That means I got to give the Bills a loss here. I'm going to assume that they're resting their starters because they've already clinched the number 1 seed in the AFC. And don't laugh at that because 13-3, 13-4 might be good enough to get the 1 seed with how loaded this conference is. The AFC West is going to beat up on each other. I don't see anybody in the AFC West getting more than 12 wins. The AFC South is limited. Is it going to be Tennessee? Is it going to be Indy? Are either of those going to get 11 plus wins? Probably not. AFC North, do we see Cincinnati being a 12-13 win team? Is Baltimore, Cleveland, depending on the Deshaun Watson situation, are any of them getting 13? I think 13 wins gets it done for the 1 seed, and I have the Bills losing this meaningless season finale against New England. Realistically, as we saw here, I had losses to Kansas City, Cleveland, Cincinnati, New England. I think 13-4 is going to be my pick. Yeah. I think 13-4 is going to be my pick either way, maybe 12-5. But if I had to realistically guess which games are the most likely to be losses, I'd say LA on the road, Kansas City. You can throw in, I would say Cincinnati is a possibility, and then throw in one of Tennessee, Baltimore, in maybe one of the Miami games. But yeah, I'm going to say 13-4 final prediction.
Okay, I like it. I don't think that's crazy. I agree. I tend to agree. I think that 13-4 is the fair place to be. That's where I wanted to be. I'm going to pick for this exercise. It would be one of two things. If they win that 8 straight, though, if they rail off 8 straight and they do lose that Cincinnati game might not matter. If they're 13-2 or whatever we would have at that point, it might be done, Mike. Like, it might be done. At
12-5 might even get you in that situation. Because
I'm talking about after the Bears game. If they're 13-2 and one of the wins was Kansas City, let's say, I think it's done.
If you are in that scenario, even if you do have it clinched, so like say you're going to Cincinnati and you're 13-2, and no other team is likely to get to like 12 wins.
Yeah.
Do you let your starters rest 2 weeks?
1 week. I think you still. I
think you still have to go into Cincinnati and play. And I think McDermott has done that in the past, where as long as he sees an offensive line holding up, he wants to give them at least a couple series to at least.
I think you see a half and a half each game.
Yeah,
that's how I would see it. I would see a half Cincinnati, half New England if it in this situation, and that could play into a role. And like I'm going to pick New England in this game too, because I do think that the Bills might have everything wrapped up. I do think it's important to take one of these games or the other. But the Bills, here's an interesting take that I don't think is talked about enough. I didn't realize that Bengals game would be so late in the season. And quite frankly, are they going to want to run their real offense against the Bengals when knowing they could see them in 2 or 3 weeks from now? I don't think so. I think that you'll see.
It'll depend on what
they're going to run the ball 30 times against Cincinnati.
It's going to depend what Bengals team we see at that point. Because like every year, and this is the reason why I love schedule release day. A lot of people will say stuff like, well, you already know the teams. You just don't know when and what time. I don't typically agree with that to 100%. I like seeing how the schedule breaks down, because then I can get a vision in my head how the season is going to play out. If you have a backloaded schedule with a lot of difficult games and you get off to a poor start, you are going to have a very difficult task in front of you to make up for it. There's been teams that have been weak in the past that have jumped out to a good start because they've had a weak schedule. Then injuries or other things happen across the league, and they find a way to squeeze their way into the playoffs. The 2017 Buffalo Bills were supposed to be one of the worst teams in football, and they jumped out to a 5-2 start because they took advantage of a couple things with their schedule, fell to 5-5, but still found a way to sneak into the playoffs at 9-7. Don't tell me they're making the playoffs if you have a tough schedule to start off and they get off to a 3-4 start or a 2-5 start. The schedule matters. And they'll even tell you, Vegas people, that the type of schedule, the rest coming off a bye, how many road games in a row, when games are in certain places, it makes a difference on what your projected record will be. Maybe not a huge difference, but it does have an impact.
Yeah. And to me, like, I do think that could be a potential of the way the schedule's built in the back end of the season, that they do go ahead and maybe have a meaningless game or two. So I think that played a role in my schedule prediction. I think that Cincinnati game, I'm in the camp of play your starters, but play it and just run the ball, easy passes, don't get crazy, don't show them anything. You don't want to put anything on film that they can scheme for. And I do believe that that's what might happen. Definitely in that New England game.
Yeah. Obviously, if we're in the situation, of course, we would have to see. One other thing I do want to mention before we wrap up
Sure.
What I find so fascinating about the AFC is you normally enter a year saying, well, these 3 or 4 teams are a lock for the playoffs. Then these maybe 4 or 5 teams are going to compete for a spot. And you have a good idea which ones are more of a lock, which ones are more of a risk. In the AFC this year, it's more so you have 3 teams that can't make the playoffs, and everyone else is in it. So that's what makes everything so wild with this schedule is you look at the AFC, I can only name 3 teams I know for certain have 0% chance of making the playoffs. The Texans, the Jets, the Jaguars. Outside of that, it's open season for any team in this conference, and it could play out a million different ways. So stuff like strength of schedule and all that stuff, it's kind of meaningless at this point because we have no idea. I saw one projection by, I think it was Cynthia Freeland, which was going through each game and deciding wins and losses like we just did. And it had 4 teams making the playoffs out of the AFC West. I know the probability of that is probably astronomically small, but the AFC West is so loaded that could you have 4 teams that are 10-7 end up making it? Who knows?
Do you like the one with all this being said in the Bills? This is the year they hit the 1 seed. They've actually had like every other 2. They've had the 3. They've had 5 and the 6. They've actually been coloring the rankings list outside of the 7, and we don't want to mess with that. But do you think the 1 seed should get a bye? Do you believe that, or do you think that they should have to play the 8 seed? Whoever that would be.
100%. I think the 1 seed deserves a bye. If you've
how about the 2? Do you like the 7th team then? Do you like the 7th team?
I'm more traditionalist.
No, you don't like.
I don't love it. I think it's been all right. See, what I kind of struggle with is I think 7 is a fitting number. There's been 2 years ago when the Colts made it.
They were good.
There was a lot of teams that were right behind it that were deserving as well.
Look at this year,
even last year, the Chargers missed out on it. So, in the AFC right now, the 7 seed is probably going to be a good 10-win team. But there's going to be years where that 7 seed is going to be an 8-9 team, like an 8-win team with a losing record. And so it's kind of tough because I think when it was 6 teams, you knew the top 6 outside of the fluky 7-9, 8-8 division winner. You knew the top 6 was going to be a legitimate, very good group of teams. When you add the 7th team, you have the possibility of adding a team that really doesn't deserve to be in that group. And then you penalize the second best team in the conference by forcing them to play not a meaningless game, but a game they shouldn't have to play. But it's better than what the other leagues have it. I mean, it's better than what the NHL format is, where you have 16 out of 32 and you have crappy teams that slide in every year. It's better than the NBA. The NBA format right now is just a complete joke where you could be a 7 through 10, have the 2-game play-in series, and MLB, they don't even know what they want to do. I mean, they're switching it every year, and they're trying to get half the teams in the playoffs just to help the owners make more money. So I still think the NFL is the best format. I guess the good news is the Bills really aren't in jeopardy of missing it anytime soon with the current format. I'm just
with it to 7, even if some in an 8-week Josh Allen injury, I still think they would be a wild card team. And
I'm just glad they made it before the switch. It would have been horrible, but not horrible, but in my opinion, it would have kind of sucked a little bit
if they only could make it with the 7 teams.
In at the 7 as a 9-win team.
They got in right before that with the good 2019 team too, right?
Yeah.
So, and then of course, the next year where they're good, they have to face the 7 seed and as the 2 seed, and the first team to never get the bye, and they have to play a pretty decent Colts team that put up a good fight.
Yeah.
And then last year, they had to play, in the 36 game, and they throttled New England. But LA, how crazy
strategy late in season now as a result of this.
Because, look at the game where if they would have tied someone, you know what I mean? How crazy was that ending game of the season? Where
it probably would have benefited the Bills just to lose that game, but then you lose that game, you don't know what's going on with New England, and you don't want.
And then remember the overtime game with the the Raiders and the Chargers. If they would have just kneeled on it and this and that, and I remember it being crazy.
It's crazy because the kneeling down probably would have been the smart play, but that would have started a national conversation that I'm glad we didn't end up needing to have, because then you're talking gamesmanship, betting.
Wouldn't the Bills have gotten the Raiders? Wasn't that the thing? The Bills would have
I
played the
don't
Raiders.
think the Raiders were in play at
It
that
was the
point.
Chargers.
It was the
It would have been the
Chargers.
Chargers.
The Chargers would have come to
And we
Buffalo.
wanted the Chargers more than New England, which is fine.
I actually was 50-50. I was okay with New England. I was
confident. Mike was okay with New England, knowing this. I just personally, even though the Bills are much better and they had proved it, and New England had just fallen off a cliff, I had no interest in the Bills New England game going south for some weather reason, and having to hear New England fans. That was the only thing. I didn't like the team. I just didn't want to have to deal with like something goofy happening
in either matchup. I will say I had to be talked into like wanting the New England matchup over the Chargers matchup, and that was more so the thought process was, what if Justin Herbert comes to the East Coast and balls? Like, what if he comes out and like he's not intimidated by the cold weather, he's not intimidated by the playoffs, and he throws for 3.
No, there was no way they couldn't even make the playoffs. There was no way he was going to ball. But yes,
what is interesting though, like final point from me is, you'll see some coaches like Sean McDermott that really do value getting that higher seed, that 2 seed, that 3 seed, rather than be a 4 or something lower, because they realize the home field advantage that Buffalo is in the wintertime. And Josh Allen said it the other day on a podcast with Ernie Johnson and Charles Barkley. He was saying Josh Allen doesn't like the cold. A lot of fans think, oh, you're a quarterback of the Bills, you must love the cold. Josh Allen said, I hate the cold, but if it gives me an advantage over other teams and other quarterbacks that aren't used to playing in it, I'll take it any day because it'll help my team win. And then when you're talking about the Bills in Buffalo in January weather, nobody wants to face that. While you go on the road in a lot of these new modern stadiums, it's just generic. You go in some of these domes, you go in some of these other places. Obviously, the best team wins, but there's definitely a reason for Buffalo to care about playing home games in January, while some other teams, as we've seen in the recent past, didn't care so much. Cincinnati didn't care about getting the higher seed than the Bills. They were perfectly content going on the road against Tennessee, and obviously Tennessee got the 1 seed, but going on the road against Kansas City. The Bills, in the past, they've tried to win those games.
We got a Raiders fan, I think. If we're thinking about the Raiders at Bills 1990 rematch, sure. Why not? January 14th, 1990. We'll see what happens. Who were the Bills?
Does the seeding matter? I don't know. To Sean McDermott, it appears to. He's head coach of the Bills. That's the way the Bills probably will be going forward. To other coaches, maybe not. The 1 seeds didn't go anywhere this year, so you can argue, does it matter? It's all about perspective.
Does that bye help you ultimately? It's got some interesting data behind it, Mike. But what an action-packed show here from the Going Deep podcast. Mike and I both come in at 13-4. We both have our predictions. We'll revisit them here. Training camp, OTA notes. See a Kaiir Elam in a Bills uniform. Check that video out there on the Bills website. A lot of cool nuggets. Sean McDermott's press conference was as vanilla as imaginable here today. So there's definitely wasn't a lot to take away, but I took away the potential that the Bills add a veteran at some position, and the only position there would be cornerback, would be the only position the Bills could entertain a veteran to add some final depth. What was even funnier is the Bills are just like, we don't even want to roster 90 players. There's no reason. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then Sean McDermott got into it like, we're going to roster you, and you want to be a long snapper, you want to be a punter. He was starting to roster the media members because he was just like, he didn't like the pressing nature of like, why would you only have 75 players on May 13th? Why don't you have all these undrafted free agents? The Bills just aren't going to admit to you that like, you don't want to pay him signing bonuses. There's just no reason to have him on our roster unless we need to dip into it. And we'll probably mess with our roster as the months go on. But we want to make this an attractive position group for veteran free agents. And that's maybe what we're going to talk about next week on the show. We'll bring you that promo here in a couple of days on what we're kind of thinking about for next week. But we'll kind of recap probably some of the OTAs, some of the rookie mini camps, maybe some final position targets the Bills should go after to bolster that. and we'll kind of recap everything in the offseason for the offseason recap show is kind of what I wanted to do. So we'll bring you that offseason recap, rookie mini camps, maybe some final schedule thoughts if we have them or anything else that populates. Maybe there'll be a veteran that they try to move on here by June 1st. We'll see. But really appreciate everybody tuning in here for a 90-minute Friday special. This 8 o'clock hour is really special to us. We feel that there's still such good football content to talk about on Friday. So smash that like button. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and across the internet. Intro video to come next week. Our official intro video we're hoping to have. We're hoping to have a couple of other things. So seriously, guys, appreciate the 90 minutes from each and every one of you. And we're going to make Fridays a football show, especially in the season. Going to be a great preview show, and I'm going to have some great guests, I promise. This isn't going to be just random people. We're going to have a great Jets guest. I'm going to have some of the greatest guests on. Mark Schofield, my guy. We're going to have some great preview shows here on the Going Deep podcast.
Preview show, Kev. We got 3 Thursday games, so it's going to be – we're going to have some post game.
I know. Mike, why are you raining on my parade, on my Thursday game?
I just need to keep you accountable.
I guess so. So a bye week and 3 Thursdays, that's 4 weeks we don't have a pregame show. Like, come on. No, I guess we'll be the recap show of 3 weeks of the year.
Yeah,
how about that?
First
you're going to tune in first thing on a Friday.
Yeah, not often that we get the first opportunity to recap a game. So that'll be fun.
After Thanksgiving, we'll be on here. We'll be the Friday recap show to kind of recap in everything that goes on Fridays. So we will have plenty of recap shows to go through with you guys. So that'll be fun change every so often. Back-to-back weeks, we'll be bringing you kind of the recap for the game and kind of what we're looking forward to. So we'll have the chance to do a recap show. But anyways, guys, everybody have a good night. Appreciate everybody tuning in from the Going Deep podcast on the Cover One Network. Please smash the like. Appreciate each and every one of you. And we'll be coming back at you shortly next Friday at 8. See you soon.